Доброго дня, шановні учасники та учасниці. Вітаємо усіх.
Hello, our dear colleagues, participants who joined us already. Today we are conducting a conference, Psychological and Legal Aid to Victims of War, a year of experience after full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine and modern challenges. Today we have second day of our event and we will speak more about psychological aid and support to the victims and to each other in our professional community. My name is Valeria Rybak. I'm a head of NGO Human Rights Sector, and today I will be a moderator of this event and will also present the experience of our organization in the last year in this direction. I will immediately say a bit about technical moments. I will ask you to choose the language which you want to listen and speak at the event in. So if you want to choose Ukrainian, please tap on the globe icon and choose Ukrainian or choose English. And yes, so please choose the language you want both to speak and to listen to the conference in. And for your convenience, you can also turn off original audio. So we can move on to the content part. Today is a very important event which will unify all the experience we had in the last year. Even though it's quite difficult to do in such a short time span, because there were a lot of different events, we had a lot of different feelings and we could deal with them. And unfortunately, we still have to go through a lot in the future. So it is very important to unite our efforts in order to become stronger and to overcome these challenges, to come to our victory, but also use this experience after our victory. And yesterday, we had the first day of our conference when we spoke about legal aid, and we had a lot of interesting points. We wanted to share our experience because, in fact, we did a lot. And such events, on the example of previous day, showed us that the communication with each other is very important. And it's also crucial to see what developments we all have. And in this period of time, everything is happening very quickly. We have a lot of events. We are basically running a marathon in life, and we don't always have time to look around and to see who is working side by side with us. And maybe it's worth to look around sometimes and to see how we can form new partnerships and be useful for each other. So we created such an event in order to meet each other and to see how we can collaborate together. I welcome you to write about yourself in the chat. I already see some activity there, so I invite you to introduce yourself, to tell us where you're from, what country or city you are in right now, and what community you represent. So we would be happy to know more about each other. Also, I'm offering to you to do it in a bit different format. You will see a small poll where we ask you if you represent public or non-governmental sector, because for us it is important to collaborate also between state and civil society, because now we have quite a big problem in provision of psychological aid, because we have a very big demand, so we need to combine our efforts. For example, yesterday we could see that there are a lot of collaborations between public and non-governmental sector in the sphere of legal aid, and now we can see if we have the same story here. So now we can see that today we have participants both from public and non-governmental sector, but mostly from non-governmental. And when we conducted a questionnaire before this event in order to find out what initiatives are providing online help right now, psychological per se, we could see that there are a lot of initiatives both from public and non-governmental sector, but usually when it comes from the state, it is organized on a local level and level of local administrations and self-governance. So we hope that this collaboration will be established also in the framework of this event and for the future. I see your activity in the chat. We have psychologists from Kyiv, and I hope that other people from other cities are also joining us. Also, we have participants from different countries today. And it's important to say that the help doesn't have borders, and we saw and became sure in that in the last year, because the problem that Ukraine has faced, we were helping each other, but also receiving help from abroad, from different specialists in their related fields. And we are very grateful for that. And today we have an opportunity to listen about foreign and international experience, about ways of provision of this kind of aid and ways of improving our cooperation or direct provision of help. So today we plan to have two main parts. It's presentation of Ukrainian experience and international experience. We are quite limited in time, and we have some challenges connected with time frame, also in relation to other events. And we are happy that our speakers could join us even with their tight schedule. But at some point, some of them will have to leave. So we will try to manage time in a way to give space and opportunity to speak to everyone who wants to. Therefore, I will ask you to speak in the frame of 10 minutes. I will help you with that. And after 1.5 minutes before our time has passed, I will let you know that you can already proceed to the conclusions of your speech, so we will help each other with this time management. Also, if you have presentation, there's a possibility to share screen from my laptop, or you can do it yourself if you are more comfortable with that. So please let me know before you speak what would be more convenient for you. Another thing is the technical, so we have interpretation. So please, if you speak in Ukrainian, choose Ukrainian language, and consequently, if you speak English, then please use English channel also, because that's how we will hear each other in the languages we want. And our translator, this is me. I specialize more in legal terminology and human rights terminology, and some terms in psychology are connected with abbreviation. So I will ask you to say the whole meaning of every abbreviation, so we can all know what it means and we can translate correctly. So let's proceed to the introduction of our speakers. We proceed to the part where we will speak about. Now it's a kind of challenge for me. I don't know if we will move on to Ukrainian experience, or we will use the chance and invite Vivian Hart, who could open this conference and also make some introduction words. It is quite a good chance for us to supersede to our main topics of our events.
Тому бачила, як ми працюємо, і могла би поділитися нашим
So
досвідом.
she saw how we work and she could share this experience with us. Vivian Hart has been working for 33 years in the public health sector of Great Britain and has experience in different international work in international communities. So she will speak about her experience, I hope, and also about Great Britain as a country who opened the doors and ways of help to Ukraine, one of the first countries out of all international community. So we'll be happy to start our conference with this speech. So please tell us how do you see this collaboration between specialists from other different countries, how we can help people who need help, for example, out of those who had to move to other countries, and how to help each other in professional community.
Me. Hello, I'm Viv. Yes, my name is Vivian Hart, but I prefer to be called Viv. So thank you very much for inviting me to the conference yesterday and today. I am a psychotherapist and group analyst. I'm based in Scotland, the northern part of the UK, and I have worked in the field of psychotherapy both in the National Health Service in the UK and in the private sector for about 33 years. A lot of my work is dealing with trauma, especially in the National Health Service. So I have lots of experience of working with refugees. When I worked in London, most of my work was with refugees from other countries than Ukraine, of many different languages, and working in groups. That is my preferred way of working because it's about relationships and about being able to have some sense of community and some sense of identity with others and recognition and resonance between people's difficulties. Earlier last year, I had been in contact with one of your colleagues, Irina Rybak, and it was out of that experience of knowing Irina, and just as the war started and the invasion started of Ukraine, that I asked if there was any way I could help. At that time, suddenly there was a lot of concern about what was happening for children, especially, I might not pronounce this correctly, but Bucha. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but out of that experience, I was able to bring together psychotherapists and group analysts from across the UK and also parts of Europe to offer support for initially for children, but then wider for adults as well, working online either to supervise therapists locally or to provide therapy online to those who could access it. And initially that was free to everyone who could access it. However, I also said if there was anything further I could do. So Irina suggested it might be valuable to invite someone as a guest from Ukraine. So I now have someone staying with me, and that happened from June last year, which is a very different experience for me personally, because I have now got a personal experience in my home of what it feels like to be in a war zone, which most of you are experiencing. Before that, I could only experience it through the television or the radio or papers. And it's been a massive emotional turmoil for me to have that experience with someone who has fled the war, but still has the war in their experience and the trauma of that war. So that's been quite difficult, I think, for both of us. However, it's about accommodating and understanding as you go along. I suppose the most important thing is that I'm very good at developing networks of people to connect with each other for about what work needs to be done. And locally in Scotland, I was one of the initial, I can't think of the right word, one of the people who started an online host support group for those people who were hosting Ukrainians who came in the last year, and what they might need in terms of mental health support, because they'd never done it before. But what became clear is that it wasn't just that they needed support, but those who were coming into their homes needed support. So I connected various people through this host group connected them to online support groups, both for people from Ukraine and also people from the UK who were supporting them. Locally in Scotland, I'm also involved in a refugee network that can provide additional support for people from Ukraine, as well as other refugees from other countries. And I continue with my work as a therapist and working with trauma. I'm not really sure what else to say. I mean, I haven't got a presentation, but I just wanted you to know that there are lots of people around me and around what I do that can access support for you if and when you need it. And you know, you can contact me at any point and let me know if there's something you would need, whether it be online groups, whether that's therapy, support therapy, or supervision, and I may be able to access this for you through various methods, because I know quite a lot of people internationally and also in UK. I think that's all I'll say, Valeria. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Пані Вів'єн, дуже дякую. Вівта.
Thank you so much for your help, first of all, and for being with us today, for sharing your experience. And in reality, such cooperation internationally is very important, and helping each other is crucial. So if the group has any questions to Vivian, I will ask you to ask them now, so we can use the time efficiently and maybe find out something more. And maybe I will ask what kind of recommendations and what direction do we have to move in order it's about the specialists, right? In order to help people even better, and what forms are more efficient, the most efficient in this way. And maybe since the help is provided abroad, also what kind of challenges do you have there, and what could be improved? So I also see Tatiana's hand, and next question will be from her.
Вибачте, у мене настільки запитання. Доброго дня. Мене звуть Тетяна Бойко, і я знаю, що Вів'єн
So I know that Vivian has to leave the conference soon, and using this opportunity, I would like to thank Vivian, for accommodating me and my son at her place. It was what she was speaking about the direct help and individual help. So I'm endlessly grateful for this experience and for your support.
Бачите, допомога на різних рівнях, дійсно.
Thanks, Tatiana. In answer to Valeria's question, I think difficulty in accessing support is connecting to the right professionals, first of all, because there were a lot of people in the beginning of the war that wanted to rush in to help without really thinking what is going on, that people are traumatized, and at first what they need is some path to practical help. And it might not be that they need something like psychotherapy as such, but a way of talking about the transitions that they are making, whether it's a transition staying in Ukraine and what you're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis in Ukraine, but also for those who are going across countries, what that feels like, what the experience is like in different cultures, and just realizing that you're probably going through different cultural zones and not being able to process that so easily when you're also traumatized by the experience that's happening in your homeland. And I think groups that could offer that to people as support rather than as in quotes therapy is much more important early in someone's request for help. But then as that changes, as time changes, time goes by, and it seems like the war is continuing for so long that actually there may be work to be done around the trauma as well. So it's looking at different specialists for that stage that could maybe use EMDR or different forms of therapy that focuses on trauma. But I do think group work is so important because of the sense of not feeling alone. And when people are traveling across borders, they certainly do feel alone. I mean, I think of Tatiana when she arrived in Inverness, and I only later discovered that was her first time on a plane. Just being on a plane for the first time must have been quite shocking, you know, and having to process that as well as everything else. So it's being able for those specialists involved to understand those different changes that people are going through, the transitions. So that's being able to access the right help. And I suppose because I had access to so many different specialists in the area of therapy, I could connect them as a network. And that's what I did originally. And I left that network to carry on by itself. I think once people are in the new country, it's also being able to access support and for people to know where to access support. And that's a very different thing from therapy. And I think I've been very fortunate, and Tatiana's been very fortunate in Scotland, that there is so much support here, maybe in a different way than England, actually, that it feels a lot more engaging. We want to help, we want to make a difference, and they offer so much. But unfortunately, you still need to know where to get it from. So you do need to have someone who's your ally or your advocate here. Some people might not have that experience once they've arrived. I know some Ukrainians have ended up on ships in Glasgow port, and although the ships were really nice ships, they're cruise ships, it's not a good experience to have like that. So a lot of the people I originally was involved with in Scotland to host Ukrainians have gone onto that ship to help them. And they've subsequently started to move into homes with people like myself. All I could say is if you want any support, I can leave my email in the chat. And if there is anything that you think it would help to know about UK, I'm a bit nervous, on this. So I have lots more information inside my head than I'm actually sharing with you probably. And I could, if you want, by all means, email me and I will do whatever I can to find the right information in the UK. Hope that answers your question, Valeria.
Дуже дякую, та дійсно це
Thank you a lot. And yes, these are some important vectors for our work, and also both in Ukraine and abroad for specialists who provide psychological support. Thank you for your answer. I see another question in the chat.
І якщо
Do you work with servicemen and do you work with Ukrainian servicemen, and what kind of help do you see as the most efficient for them?
Thank you. I haven't worked with Ukrainian servicemen, but in the NHS, the National Health Service of the UK, I was a specialist in PTSD for veterans of the British military services. So I've done a lot of work with our own veterans who've gone through trauma. However, I suppose the difficulty is being able to provide either Ukraine or Russian translation, depending on which is their first language. It's being able to access translators that can be difficult, although I do have Ukrainian colleagues who are psychotherapists who've offered that, and we've run joint groups where there is an English therapist and a Ukrainian therapist. And again, I think for men, often it would depend. They often want to be seen individually for a while because they find the idea of groups a bit shaming, but I think coming together in a group can also be really helpful for them. So I'm fairly confident that I could access the right professionals to get that support if it was needed, but it would also be making sure that they had a translator or a therapist who spoke both Ukraine and English.
Thank you. And I hope that we have a bit more time, and maybe we will get back to the question and answer session after our next speakers. And maybe if you will still be here, we can continue our communication. I was very happy to see you at our event, and then let's proceed.
Thank you.
So we have planned introductions of different initiatives which work in Ukraine. And we will present this blog, me, Irina Radske, and so after 24th of February, reacting to the challenges we had in our life, we were looking for ways to be the most efficient with the resources we have, and having communicated with our partners, we decided that we can help in provision of psychological and legal aid to people with disabilities, first of all, because our partners back in the day fight for rights were helping with evacuation and crossing the border to people with disabilities, but this component of psychological and legal aid was not covered. So we decided to launch it in online format. And we were receiving calls on the hotline from people who were in Ukraine and abroad. These were also families of people with disabilities. And back then, we have built a mechanism of our work in a way that we provide help to both our external beneficiaries and also inside the team. And I think it's very important, and we will speak a lot about it because helping each other is the foundation of our qualitative work. And we will speak about supervision groups, about consultations with different specialists from different professions that intersect ours in order to provide better help. Over time, we have expanded our target audience. Now it's also other people who suffered from the war who apply for help. It's servicemen, it's people who were forced to leave their homes either within Ukraine or abroad. And Tatiana will speak about it today. Because the demand is growing constantly, and it is obvious that such help is not only necessary after 24th of February, but it started way before from the shootings at Maidan. It was very traumatic for us. But in general, from all the events which we survived and lived through, is the biggest one is the full-scale invasion. And it's probably the biggest challenge which we have encountered and at this point, and we have to overcome it. From what is important to say to me is that we are working also on the informational direction. We are creating different materials where we share information about different kind of aid which people can receive. It is mainly about legal issues, but also we conduct webinars, educational events, also for specialists in our professional community in order to see how other psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists work, and in order to work on it together. Also, in the framework of our hotline, it's interesting that we combine legal and psychological. We collaborate between legal and psychological departments because we understand it as a part of general resilience plan for our community, and it allows us to build a solid structure and understanding on how we can act jointly, both from legal and psychological point of view. And sometimes we had occasions when people apply to us for legal aid, and then we refer them to also psychological line and vice versa. It's very interesting. We were talking about it in our previous events and webinars as well. So we also invite you to watch them in our YouTube channel, Human Rights Vector. And I will stop for now and will give space to our colleagues in order to let them speak about our work. So please, Irina Radske, who is supervisor and head of and also she is a member of the European Association of Psychologists and Psychotherapists. And Vivienne Hart, who is so yeah, please, Irina, tell us about your experience of supervision, because in our project you were doing the direction of support of specialists of our hotline. And also another important moment is group consultations, because we were providing these as well. So I will ask you to speak more about it. Hello, everyone. My dear colleagues, I'm very happy to see you. And it's very nice to see the faces of people I know. And I have an honor to represent the part of a team which organizes this event. And this final event is about our year of work after the war, which we have worked with courage and joint efforts, even though maybe we weren't completely ready for it. In reality, when the war started, we weren't ready for war, but for extreme situation as such. Valeria remembered about Maidan, and yes, we were together in Maidan as a daughter, mother, and grandmother. And for me, it is something very close and very sensitive.
Прошу вас перейти в український канал, ви говорите на українській, якраз щоб була забезпечена переклад і
Yes, there was just some technical issue with
Так, як це
channel.
зробити технічно? Я на українському. Тут де
внизу там є вибрати можливість український, закордонний, англійський,
так, зараз як?
український. Я попрошу маякнути, чи нам все гаразд.
Я вибрала, чи все чути, як? Скажіть, будь ласка.
Так, чудово, дякую.
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 Друзі, всі
Е,
переходьте в український канал. Хто
Так, я
український?
нажала, але з телефону я не зрозуміла, як. Дякую. Добре. Ну,
Yes, we just had some technical issues with language channels. So yes, we were preparing basically in the last couple of years since Maidan. Later on, we had collaboration between and psychological aid for lawyers in times of COVID. And when the war started, we did not really get lost, and it was very important. We didn't prepare to the war as war, but we had the inner readiness to the need to protect our homeland, and we were ready to do everything to defend ourselves. And 26th of February, we had the first supervision, which was supported by Christopher Scambler. And also from March, Vivian also joined our work, and other colleagues as well. Natalia Pitkaluk, who is also with us today, and we were already conducting seminars and thinking about how to prepare specialists in order to defend our homeland also on this level. As for today, I see a strategic perspective of our defense as a prevention of social trauma, of repercussions of social trauma, because there's no Ukrainian who is in Ukraine or abroad and who is not traumatized. But as we know from statistics and as we know from the scientific approaches, only 25% of people have trauma as such, and PTSD as a diagnosis. All others are going through it on their own and dealing with it step by step. But it can last 5-10 years, even longer sometimes. So what we are doing now, we are basically doing for our children and even for our grandchildren, and also for ourselves. So when we started our work, we chose 4 approaches. First, as we were helping people who were our clients, people with disabilities, or their family members, their loved ones, friends. Second approach was to our colleagues, So the idea was that a person who is tired, exhausted, and unstable will not be able to help others. So we conducted supervisions from the first days of war. And third approach is individual and group consultations, group work. Why we separated? Because group has the effect of positive charge of people between each other, and they charge each other with power, with different positive vibrations. And we had small groups, so they were supporting a kind of family condition. And fourth approach is educational work. It's our webinars, explainers about what is happening with us psychologically. In general, this activity was directed at, as I said, prevention and preventive support of feeling of continuous time. Because as I already said yesterday, the trauma influences the feeling of time and the possibility to establish connections, understanding of what is happening, and restoration of our role in society. So it helps in further in direction. And the main inspiring element of our team is Valeria, who organized and developed the whole idea. And such an artsy element of each member, of each participant, personal stories, they are all very important and influencing all what was happening in this process. We were learning along with our clients, and we were learning from each other. And this possibility to keep the ability to study helped us to work through this last year, and I'm very thankful to all of you. Thank you, Rima, for these warm words and for presenting our part. So at this positive note, we will continue. Pani Tatiana, I will ask you to speak a bit more about individual consultations, what kind of clients are coming to you, with what requests, and if you manage to work in such format that we chose for like 10-15 clients, did you manage to achieve the goals you set for yourself? So thank you. I'm a psychologist from Chernihiv. Temporarily, I live in Scotland. I'm one of the psychologists who participated in helping people with disabilities at the hotline mentioned before. And now I will share my experience. The clients who applied to the hotline had a lot of adaptation disorders, anxiety disorders, behavioral problems, and suicidal thoughts. They often had a feeling of loss of home, interactions, loved ones, or status. In many cases, chronic disease becoming acute in this case, and other disorders not connected with the war also showed up. And the clients were mostly complaining about fear, anxiety, changes, anger, troubles in relations, and general physical condition, for example, headache and back pains. A lot of people could not solve the dilemma of moving to another country. They wanted to go back to Ukraine. They wanted to get rid of the status of refugee. And on another hand, there was a constant fear of the war and coming back to not to unsafe space. Many of those who many of them felt that the connections are getting ruined. Children had the feeling of a distance from parents and friends and difficulty from having to study in both Ukrainian and foreign schools. They were losing interest to real life and getting more into online world. At the hotline, people had the opportunity to receive from 10 to 15 consultations. And most of the consultations were dedicated to consulting about dangerous conditions such as suicidal behavior and consulting about general psychological condition, also referring to psychiatrists and other specialists. In most cases, clients were receiving supportive consultations. We were mostly working for expanding coping strategies. And in some cases, there was a need to conduct more sessions to work on trauma. Work with children was mostly accented on learning the situation in detail and the character of relations with parents, and teaching parents new ways of influencing behavior of their children. Separately, I want to thank to the organizers of the event for supporting our supervisory activity during the project. It was very useful. And thank you for the opportunity to take part in specialist. For me, it was important, very good to feel important and useful for my compatriots. And thank you to the people who were helping me with evacuation. I'm endlessly grateful to Irina Rybak and to Vivian Hart for support. And thanks to them, I could stand and help others further. Thank you, Tatiana. It's very warm words, and thank you for your speech about the clients who were applying and what kind of challenges they had. It's true, our mutual help actually saves us and people around us, so we will continue working in this direction. Let's continue. We also have an opportunity to find out about another initiative which will be presented by Hanna Mokrosova. We will speak about provision of help to people who are currently in captivity or were in captivity and to their families. And it is also a very difficult work, which I'm very thankful for. And unfortunately, a number of people who end up in such situations are increasing. And Hanna with her team began this work from the very first days of war. So it's very important for us to hear about this experience. So please, we welcome you. So also a little reminder on language channel. And 1.5 minutes before the end of time, I will remind you that we are approaching. Hello, everyone. Thank you for introduction. Me and my team, we work since 2014. We help people who survived the detention, captivity, and families of people who disappeared. I will always underline that we work with a team because our sphere is that we cannot only work in psychological direction. So our organization also provides social, medical, legal, and psychological support. From the beginning, our specialists are working in the complex It's a case-based approach. And in this aspect, we cannot separate these all directions from each other. Usually it's the holistic health which is interconnected. If we take the context of and comparing 2022 and 2014, the situation is completely different from one side, and from another side is this quite they're quite similar between each other. And what are similarities and differences? First of all, people who survive through captivity and unlawful detentions, they go through tortures very often, and very often they come back and their home can be under occupation. It is now connected to civilians and military. So in fact, after they come back, they have nowhere to live, and they end up in the condition of internally displaced person, which is doubled by the traumatic experience of captivity. So our organization, the first help it provides, and we think that it should be, is medical. Now medical support is so now the state took over the medical support direction, and it was a big support to our work as well, because between 2014 and 2017 it was not the case, and in 2017 the state began to provide medical aid immediately after release from captivity, but it was only in regard to civilians who were exchanged through official channels. But in times of war, a lot of people are getting in captivity, and civilians are often let go not only while official exchanges. Unfortunately, in our state practice, until 2017, complex medical help was not provided. From 2017 until 2022, it was provided mainly to those who were exchanged while official exchanges. But today, we can say that, in fact, the state took over the medical support completely on themselves. Second thing is we always start working immediately after the release. We start working with people who were released from captivity, and the first thing we are facing is problems with sleep disorders and different obsessive thoughts. And we are talking about professional psychological support. It is quite a long stage of normalization and stabilization. Simultaneously, we are tracking the demand and requests to work with the families of people because the support from family is something which helps people recuperate as fast as possible and to get prepared for regular life. And it's very important that at first stages we involve legal help, because after this kind of experience, most of people need understanding that what happened with them, this horrible experience, doesn't have to it has to be so it has to be investigated, and the responsibility has to be put on somebody who did that to them. And at this point, what we see now, that at the state level, the state is really interested in investigation, and it is collecting evidence in order to apply to international courts. So for us, even as specialists who work with psychological issues, it is a very helpful factor, because in 2015 and 2014, we were really fighting with the state to provide this kind of investigation, because the state didn't have any understanding who and how had to do that. So if I'm being brief. And in general, our experience, if we're talking about the challenges, the main challenges are is the scope of the problem and its massive character. Before 2022, we had several thousands of per year of requests from people per year who were released from captivity. And if we're talking about today, it is just an enormous number of people. We have to work with the flow of people. Very often people who survived captivity, if we're talking about servicemen, after some time, they come back after rehabilitation, they come back to the front line. And some of them really wanted, but not all of them want to go back to the front line to fight. And there is a big problem in legislation of Ukraine that servicemen cannot resign. There is a bill which could give them the opportunity to resign, to choose whether to continue service or not, but so far this bill has not been adopted. And we don't know if it will be ever. Also, another challenge is that we work with a huge flow of people. We work in conditions of constant shootings, shellings. And in fact, not all of our specialists will always even take the responsibility to work with this trauma because it is still happening in quite traumatizing circumstances. And we also cannot really count and manage our time because of the air alert. We cannot always work in safe conditions and dedicate enough time, sufficient time for consultation. Also working in a flow regime, we cannot always choose maybe if it's a serviceman who goes back to fight after captivity, we don't always have enough time to work through this trauma apart from some kind of initial stabilization and normalization of their condition. Working on traumatic experiences is always most often postponed to the post-victory period for us, post-war period. And we face the challenge when we are feeling that we don't work enough and that we do not really complete the process of our work because we don't have enough time and conditions to provide this kind of help. And aside from a big flow of people, again, I would like to say that at this moment, in fact, all of our work is happening in coordination with the state. And it was something which we were really striving for since 2014. And on the level of medical health, we work in collaboration with state medical services and the state hospitals, which provide rehabilitational support. And people who survive captivity can receive neurologist, psychologist support, and go through a holistic rehabilitation process. If we're talking about fixating of war crimes, we are also working with law enforcement agencies, and we see that the desire from their side to get involved, to communicate, to talk with witnesses in a non-traumatizing way. And in fact, the only thing in this big flow, the main challenge for us is huge, massive flow and impossibility to have enough time for holistic work with clients. The cooperation between NGOs and the public sector is really helpful, and work with other community organizations is helping a lot. I also see our partners here, representative organizations who work with psychologists. It is very often about support of families And also, if it's a case when it was a family of a person who disappeared and then became a family of a person who died, we also transfer and refer these people to relevant organizations. And in fact, we have a lot of people who need our help, and this kind of cooperation of non-governmental and public sector and understanding of who is responsible for what work in this process is very important for us and very, very helpful in our work in Ukraine.
Пані Ганно, дуже дякую за
Thank you very much for your speech. It is a very complicated topic, and some moments which you mentioned, I will comment them immediately, and also about cooperation on different levels together with the state, for example. I'm very happy that you could manage that. And before this event, we made requests to Ministry of Health about provision of psychological help in online format, because we were conducting study about different hotlines of online support, and we received an answer that first of all, there are 3 hotlines which provide psychological support, and no, we didn't receive any detailed information apart from that. So that was this kind of experience we had, but it's very important to understand and know who is doing what in order to be able to refer people to an institution which could help them in the most efficient way. And about the complex approach, for me it was also very interesting. In fact, when we provide complex help, there is a bigger chance to really help a person. You named several components. In our case, it was, for example, psychological and legal. So combining these approaches, we have more chances to help this person holistically. And from the questionnaire we made before the event, out of the respondents, 41% of them provided only psychological support. A small percentage combined psychological with medical support. 26% who combined legal and psychological aid, and only legal was 26% of respondents. So we do not see so many examples of such combined complex cooperation, and we can always develop more partnerships in order to develop a complex help. And I want to thank you, Hanna, and go further to Natalia Pitkaluk, our next speaker, who will present an important experience of an NGO which is working with in psychological direction. And Natalia is the head of IPSI and non-governmental organizations, psychiatrist, and trauma focus trainer. And I want to say that Khmelnytsky in this case is an example of an area which received a lot of IDPs, and also military men, because as we remembered about state hospitals and also military hospitals, it's an important component of help to servicemen. And today Khmelnytsky was also under shelling, so we cannot really separate the areas for safe and not safe anymore, unfortunately. So I want to ask you what kind of changes you oversaw during the last year and what challenges you faced. Thank you, Valeria, for inviting me. In reality, for me, this kind of events is something we need most right now. There were a lot of really nice initiatives established or expanded from before, and it would be nice to see that some sort of system would be built from all this. And as we heard before from other speakers, this is the work that will last for many years, and coordinating our efforts, we will support each other as specialists, and will also provide help to people who need it in a timely manner. I have a small presentation, and I will try to share it.
Насправді, я побудувала свою
I built my
презентацію
presentation
нашої невеличкої громади.
on the level of our small community,
Транзитним місцем.
because Khmelnytsky also became a kind of transit city. Just in first days and months of war, a lot of people were going through Khmelnytsky, some were staying there. Please, next slide.
І насправді
So, in fact, COVID and war, the war has been from 2014, and it kind of gave us an opportunity to prepare for the full-scale invasion. But I was shocked, and I didn't believe that the war would start. In December 2021, I transferred from public to non-governmental sector and funded a non-governmental organization. And we wanted to create a space for psychological support. We have specialists who work with children, with different directions, trauma. So we wanted to create a space where nobody would be afraid or stigmatized, because a lot of people are stigmatized for receiving psychiatric or psychological support. So we opened, and then the war started. So this is our space. We were left without anybody for 2 weeks, and in the first days of war, I was observing these stressful reactions on myself. I couldn't answer calls from clients who were a lot. I needed some time to stabilize myself, and a big opening for me was when I started calling back to clients. In reality, most of them wanted to call and ask what they can help with. Somebody had the maps of bomb shelters. Somebody wanted to offer help with moving, and it was very touching for me. And I didn't really understand it because they were my clients, and somehow everything became reversed. And a lot of people didn't know what to expect. They were afraid to leave home. And the first thing we did, we created a hotline, and we're conducting online support groups for Khmelnytsky citizens. In 2 weeks, we gathered in our team, and our roles have changed because some of our colleagues, men, became servicemen and went to fight to the war. One of our colleagues left to Czech Republic with children, and apart from feeling the changes from war from our clients, we also felt it in our team. But step by step, we took the risk to continue our work offline and began working in the office. With support of Czech organization People in Need, we received additional support and could work also individually and in group offline. So for me, it is very close what Vivian was saying, how people were finding some senses in groups and exchanging energy. And at first we were making groups for internally displaced persons, but over time we created a strategy of mixed groups. So we have partly people from Khmelnytsky, locals, and partly people who moved here. And in such conversations, they find different senses, because they are wives of men who went to war as volunteers, for example. And we have a relatively peaceful city. But as Valeria said, it's very conditional, of course, and men went to protect our country, and other people who came from the areas which were affected the most by the war. And in these dialogues, we could build mutual understanding, support, and feeling of unity. So we continue conducting these groups of mixed format, and in collaboration with labor centers, with the social services, we went to the regions where we gathered such support groups. We have several programs. Our therapists are conducting creative psychology groups, as we call them, mostly for children, but also for adults. Our neurologists are conducting groups on psychological regulation, for example, yoga, something.
Така ресурсна група, яку ми
Resource groups.
як серію зустрічей. Ну, найбільш питома вага
And
людей
the
від 18 до
most
59.
our audience is mostly from 18 to 59, mostly women. And sometimes we also had older people and also children. Children are a separate category. They needed a lot of support and help. Of course, the challenges were changing. While it was warm, these groups could be conducted in our space. Sometimes it was an open space, open air. When we started having troubles with electricity, sometimes it was looking very romantic but quite cold. We got blankets and the candles, and we saw that people are still coming. We saw the demand, and we tried to organize the space as cozy as it could be. Sometimes our partners were providing some space where we knew that it would be warm there, and people kept coming, so we continued our work even after the power cutoffs began. A separate direction of our work is cooperation with veterans and their families. And I think that every Ukrainian here or abroad became a member of serviceman family, because for sure brother or father or other relatives are fighting from each of our family. So it's quite a broad target group right now, and it's an example of an initiative which was established after the full-scale war, was Veteran Hub. They organized the space with other organizations who worked with servicemen since 2016. And now it is a kind of network of spaces which have a similar spectrum of services and standards of aid, where we can refer people knowing that there is such a space in one or another region. This is the part where we are working with veterans and their families, where people can apply for psychological support and also legal and social support by our partners, Veteran Hub. Also, there's a demand in teaching of military psychologists. We were conducting intervision groups. I see question. What military psychologists wanted to learn from your community? That was the question. So we had requests for supervisions and intervisions in our space. Also, we had requests for crisis consulting, as we were invited as civilian psychologists in some crisis situations, because sometimes military men have some prejudice to psychologists who are supposed to work with them, because they find it sometimes as a showing of weakness. And we were conducting such group work as invited psychologists in military units in our city, and we have quite a lot of them. I also work with families of deceased. Is the area of work which is unfortunately expanding, and we're trying to develop a joint program with local authorities for conducting retreats for families of deceased, which are quite a broad audience among our clients, unfortunately.
хочу подякувати
In
всім,
fact,
що
I would like to thank to all international community, to Irina, to Vivian as representatives of this international community, because this is something which gave us the feeling of stability in the beginning of our work. And these supervisions which were offered, such support groups for specialists and field visits, study visits. I'm often going abroad lately, and these 1-2 days always give me a kind of recharge and the feeling of stability in the chaos, and it helps a lot. And the fact that last year we had colleagues from United States and conducted an offline conference in Khmelnytsky was very supportive. This year they will come again. I hope, regardless of everything, in June, and we will try to repeat this experience. You can see the pictures.
Незважаючи на обставини, зможемо
And I
зустрітися.
hope that we will be able to meet.
Якщо хвилинка, то, мабуть, давайте останній слайд.
Okay, let's go to the last slide.
Насправді, я думаю, що наш досвід
I think our experience is quite unique, and we can build something nice out of it. Nevertheless, the circumstances are quite terrible, but we are still standing, and we see the potential for development of different other services in public and non-governmental service sectors. And the main thing to remember is that we are the most important, let's say, instrument for our clients. So we need to pay attention to expanding our services, and also thanks to such events like this one, in building intersectional connections is something which will help us rebuild our country. Thank you for your attention. Thank you a lot for this presentation, and also for good time management. Now we have an opportunity to have a Q&A session to the speakers of our first part of the event. So if you want to ask question with your voice, please raise your hand, and please be also brief. And also you can type your questions in the chat. Please make sure that you are speaking in the channel that you want to also hear, so we will not have any problems with translation. I see a hand from Vivian. Yeah, it was applause, no? Okay, then I will ask the first question. I will start from the end and ask Natalia. So I have a question about the conference you advertised to us. Is it possible to take part or to see some broadcasting? So yes, we will post about it soon, and one of the ideas that we were inspired by this event is that we can make a panel for Ukrainian organizations. We will make online and offline parts, and those who will be able to be present at the offline part, we want to invite them to a panel of like Ukrainian experience, because we can learn a lot from each other and see who and how manage the challenges we all have. So I think yes, on 18th of June, our colleagues from the United States will come to us, so we will dedicate this day to them. But on the first day, I think we could make a Ukrainian panel. And we have a recording from past conference in our YouTube channel. You can also see it if you want. Thank you. Also, then I will ask another question. So when we were conducting a questionnaire, one of the comments was, and it was repeating that there's a growth of psychiatric disorders, and when people apply to the specialist, the specialist can see that there is such a need for these people to apply for help.
психіатричних закладах зростає кількість.
But also in psychiatrical institutions, we can see the growth of demand in such requests. And do you see this tendency, and how do you see this cooperation between psychologists, psychotherapists, and psychiatrists? We also had this kind of cooperation between these specialists. For me, one of the shocking things was that I didn't see so many reactive reactions. And we cannot say that all of them mean psychiatric disorders. We can say that sometimes it's just a condition of a reaction to stressful event. And maybe psychologists can help for stabilization of this person's condition. Maybe sometimes some medical aid would be helpful. Maybe it would be only episodical in the life of this person. But it's very important to differentiate it and to monitor it and to do it all in timely manner in order to help the person as soon as possible. Because if we manage to help the person immediately after the symptoms arise, there is a big chance that the normalization period will start sooner. So we see that a lot, and yes, we see this kind of cooperation as very useful. And yes, thank you for remembering also about our experience. And it was a kind of supervisory and educational meeting for psychologists and psychotherapists who work at our hotline. And Natalia shared her experience in the sphere of psychiatry. And I can see that this format is very useful. So I hope that we will continue this practice in the future. I'm waiting for your questions, and I have next question to Hanna Mokrusova. So you remembered that it was very important, the process of satisfaction at the legal level is very important for your clients. And I know that a lot of non-governmental organizations are doing documenting of war crimes, and it is also including like interviewing people who suffered from war crimes. So do you see it as a possible repeated traumatization? And if yes, then how do you work with it? Do you help prosecutors' office with communication with victims of war crimes? Maybe you have experience of such cooperation with other NGOs. So yes, the prosecutor's office is undergoing training for almost a year, and from what we can see at this point, they are very interested in doing the interviewing process more ecologically to the people. And mostly people who were just released are interviewed as soon as possible, when in fact the experience is it's still quite traumatizing, but they didn't start to work through it, so they can speak quite freely about it. So this is what the law enforcement agencies are doing, and it doesn't really add traumatization. When NGOs are interviewing these people, they usually do it after they already went through some sort of rehabilitation process and try to stabilize, and they don't want to or cannot remember what happened to them. This is such an aspect of working with trauma, is that people do not always remember what happened to them after. And this is usually a scary and horrible experience, which we want to never happen. But from another side is the experience which always reminds about itself and comes as flashbacks and memories. And when people who interview such people would undergo additional training if they can track some physiological processes and psychological processes. It is something that is necessary for the people who survived this experience. From one side, it is important, it is scary to remember But from another side, it is scary that everybody will forget about what happened. So interviewing and fixating of these facts and testimonies is very crucial. And we can see that in the civil society, the organizations for documenting war crimes also started learning ecological approaches for interviewing and collecting testimonies in order not to re-traumatize victims of captivity. And we also have a separate experience when we help witnesses to form their testimonies if it comes from witnesses. Sometimes it goes through law enforcement officers if the witness is in such a condition that they cannot provide testimony right now. So we are helping to structurize the testimony and to provide it to law enforcement.
Дуже дякую за цю
Thank you a lot for your answer. It is
важливий пласт роботи.
very, very important line of work. I see a hand from Irina. I would like to add what was said before, as Natalia said, about PTSD, and I was saying that we are always learning, and now there's a big group of Ukrainian, German, and Polish colleagues who are preparing for teaching more people, more specialists on how to work with traumatized people. There are different methodics being used.
Я знаю, що з багатьма ви спілкуєтесь дуже
So there was a request to
багато людей.
expand the abbreviations because yes, sometimes it's not very clear. So there was about methodics, about the methodic that helps understanding our own feelings, and the name of this methodic is listing these feelings. And another one is cognitive behavioral therapy. So these are the approaches which work in this situation which we have now, and also for the perspective in the strategic way. Also, we try to combine group and psychoanalytical approaches which can be used after stabilization of person's condition. And this combination of approaches and methods provides a good high-quality result. As for working with refugees, it can be, as I described work with refugees in Germany before, but this information can also be useful for specialists who work with internally displaced persons. And I had a publication about this in a professional magazine journal, and I hope that I can share this information also at your informational resources. As for Anna's speech, I think that this kind of cooperation is possible because a number of people who need understanding of where their loved ones are, if they are already dead or are still in captivity or in some other circumstances, it is a separate support for them, and for this we need this mutual understanding and cooperation. Yes, it is true. Cooperation of non-governmental and public sectors is crucial in this way as well, and it can be an intersection of different fields and direction of help of different people who are in different circumstances. Thank you a lot, dear colleagues, and for your questions. Now we have a little break. Dear participants, let's come back and start our second half of the conference. Please mention in the chat if you are with us. I can see that you are coming back. We have a very interesting part ahead of us. It's the presentation of our experience of our foreign international colleagues. It will be very diverse experience because everybody works in a different field and can share their experiences, how we can coordinate. Thank you for your activity. Now we are back to our conference, and now I have an honor to give the floor to Anastasia Yun, PhD, Massachusetts University in Boston, specialist in applied behavior analysis, supervisor who is currently in the United States and will present her interesting experience along with her colleague, Olena Chayevska, candidate of philological sciences in Germany. So we will combine our time and space here to share our experiences. So please, could you share your screen? I will check that you are in the English channel, so we will hear the translation of everything what you're saying. Okay, I can see the presentation, so I give the floor to you and waiting for.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me very well. Thank you for the invitation to this wonderful place. My name is Anastasia Yun, and I'm very happy to be here. So I guess my colleague was already introduced. Okay, so we are going to talk about our experience in providing support to families and professionals in the world of applied behavior analysis. So we will be talking a lot about children with special needs. All right, so this is our agenda. We will talk a little bit about the statistics and what's happening in the world of applied behavior analysis in our region. And then we will talk about the goals and research in applied behavior analysis. And then we will talk about what we did to solve some problems. And more specifically, we will talk about the course sequence that we developed with Elena. Okay. So we wanted to start here. So there used to be one big major organization that oversaw a lot of countries, I mean all of the countries. It was called Behavior Analyst Certification Board. That's where people in applied behavior analysis and professionals receive their certifications. It used to be an international organization that is no longer international. International Behavior Analysis Organization took over, and now this is the one that's trying to become international. So the statistics is like this. As you can see, in the United States, there are almost 200,000 people, 200,000 professionals registered in applied behavior analysis. Meanwhile, there are only 4 people who are board certified behavior analysts in Ukraine. At the same time, and this is the main organization. The new organization that took over is International Behavior Analysis Organization, has 1,500 people registered, and these are the certified behavior analysts who are eligible to work with families and children with special needs who are eligible to provide high quality services. And only 3 people from Ukraine are registered there. This is, just want you to pay attention on the numbers. Like here in the US, there are almost 200,000 and only 4 people in Ukraine. So there are not enough professionals who are certified and who are eligible and who can legitimately provide services. If you look at United Kingdom, Great Britain, there are overall 800 specialists who are certified. And if you look at these numbers mean that for example, in the United Kingdom, there are 580 board certified behavior analysts. These are independent people who can provide services almost without supervision. They do seek peer-to-peer supervision, but they can function independently. 152 people cannot function independently. They always work under the supervision of board certified behavior analysts. Another thing to know is that not every single board certified behavior analyst can provide supervision. You have to seek additional training and become a supervisor to supervise other people and supervise your peers. So, as you can see, overall, there are not enough people in the world, and especially there's a scarce and lack of people in Ukraine. This is the statistics. These two organizations, this slide is about how many organizations are eligible to provide registered education to professionals who want to become applied behavior analysts. So this organization, Association for Behavior Analysis organization, it works with this main organization, Behavior Analyst Certification Board, and at least in the United States, there are 666 registered organizations. No organization is registered in Ukraine, so there is no. So the thing is that there is a lack of both parties. There are not enough people, professionals who are eligible to provide services, and there are no organizations who can provide education. But at the same time, this organization is no longer of high interest for us because it works mostly with these countries now: United States, Canada, Australia, and United Kingdom. The organization that provides accreditation to people who want to provide education abroad now is the International Behavior Analysis Organization. And so far, there are only 12 education content providers registered, and one of them is us. We were the very first one who developed a course in Ukrainian, and then there was a second one appeared just recently. So there are only 2 registered content providers right now who can provide education in Ukrainian language. So what we did is we also looked at the agenda that was provided by Association for Behavior Analysis International, and right now the current goals for the future in the field of applied behavior analysis is to become extremely trauma-informed. ABA should be very trauma-informed, and ABA should be very current and modern. And the most recent version of applied behavior analysis is the acceptance and commitment therapy. Not all educational programs in psychology and applied behavior analysis actually teach this content, so it's kind of new. Our personal contribution to this field. So we understand that different people provide different supports and help right now. So we decided to go with the research. So what is lacking in research right now in our region is the information on social emotional learning. So we did is that we wrote a monograph about it, how to, and there we wrote how we can combine social emotional competencies with education. And also we're currently working on a different research where we look at families with special needs. This is a really under-researched population, especially in Ukraine. We couldn't find any articles that talk about what happens with families with children with special needs, what kind of traumatic experiences they're going through, what's happening to the children. Most of the research that's available is focusing on able-bodied, so-called quote-unquote healthy individuals. So right now we want to share with our preliminary results to show what's happening and what we found. So we collected data from families with children with special needs, and we wanted to look at several things. First, we wanted to see how they are coping, so where their resilience level is right now. 21% of the respondents have the same scores that people diagnosed with PTSD show. Other 29% of respondents show the same scores that people with generalized anxiety disorder have. Other 29% show the same results, the same resilience results that people, psychiatric outpatients have. Other 11% of respondents have the results that correspond to people who are in primary care, and 7% of people, of the respondents, have the average quote unquote again normal resilience scores, and only 1% of the respondents is coping very well. Then we also looked at their traumatic experiences in the childhood. This is the graph. So the current term for traumatic childhood experience is adverse childhood experience, and it can be quantified. And by adverse childhood experience, we mean perpetuating experience of trauma in childhood that can affect future of the people. The way to read this graph is this. 21% of people said they had no childhood experience, meaning that they're not in the risk category. People who who scored from 1 to 3 are in intermediate risk, but also some people from who scored 3 points and beyond, they're the ones who are in the risk of experiencing toxic trauma, meaning that they might have health-related issues in their adulthood. We also looked at what's happening with their children on the social emotional level. So what we found is that these are the average scores of the results. So this score is the score for overall stress. From 0 to 10 is the average score. That's where people are okay to. So this is the okay score for stress. But the thing is that these children are going through a lot of stress, so their stress level is almost doubled, and some children even had score of 34, meaning that they're like in extreme stress. The average score for emotional distress should have been 3, but our results show that on average children are emotionally distressed more than on average. But of course, like the data range, the individual data range is different. Some children are under more emotional distress. They show also increased behavioral difficulties. Some show less, some show more, but on average, they have an increased score for behavioral difficulties. Their symptoms of hyperactivity and poor concentrations are also very high. They have problems with getting along with other children. So the average score, which is considered to fall within normalcy, is from 0 to 2, but our population shows that at least 6 on average. And the score for prosocial behavior should have been here. And this score means that they have a lot of problem behavior, not very prosocial. So what this data tells us is that when we prepare professionals in applied behavior analysis, we need to take this data into account. These professionals should understand who they are working with, what they need to do, and provide high quality care. And maybe now Elena can continue.
Okay, I will follow in English. Why this research is so important? What is the practical value of this? And there is lack of knowledge about what is happening with families, with children, with special needs from Ukraine. We just do not know what is going on with them. And these data are important in treatment development, in treatment realization, and preparation of ABA professionals, because it helps to provide trauma-informed, humanistic, and individualized interventions. And you can see in this chart to see which competencies we are looking for. Is emotional competencies, social competencies, cognitive competencies, also behavior, all together. How we form it, we use different ways, like you can see modeling here, and commenting and shaping social stories. So we have a lot of tools And we want to base our intervention on current research. And we also use this information to develop and pilot proper training, which I will talk more about later. So you see this holistic framing, see competencies, and next, please. We'll go to understanding that this complex approach we use in both modalities, in individualized support and group support. So in both modalities, we value human-to-human interactions. Next. People come to us with requests to fix undesirable behavior. The goal of specialists to teach a client or a parent to achieve the same goal, but with more socially appropriate or desirable behavior. So we are pretty much change an undesirable behavior to desirable behavior. But it's not enough. We also look into what behind the observable behavior. What is emotion or thought behind the behavior? We take this information into account when we are working with our clients, because it is one of the aspects of the trauma-informed therapy. And when we get all these questions answered, we develop an individualized treatment plan for people, for children, their families. Go on the next, please. On the right, you see evidence-based treatment model, where rapport is the basis of the treatment. You see in orange color. Pay attention to the fact that intervention is not the first step in treatment development. We need to first build and always continue building rapport, connection. Identify problem, then analyze, then propose treatment, then implement intervention, and then analyze what we've done. This is model being used in psychotherapy, in education, in consultation, and also in proper applied behavior analysis practice. And also the figure on the left is a simplified picture of what going on with rapport building and with intervention, which we did. In our practice, we take into account the interaction between children, family members, educational setting, and also professional background of treatment providers. It is important to point out that the professional groups, for example, ABA providers belongs to professional group, yes, it's always like this, and this group has tremendous impact on what kind of beliefs and values this professional practice. Therefore, these beliefs and values must differ from one professional group to another. Next, please. So we see trauma-informed ABA therapy education looks like paying attention to playing, relational frame theory, social emotional learning, also families together with professionals, with ethics and peer-to-peer parent specialist communication. So basically what we did, we took our current research data, we looked at existing scientific literature on trauma-informed therapy for people with and without special needs, and we took feedback from families of children with special needs. And then you will see what is going on. So existing scientific literature, we have looked through. We volunteered to work with people with special needs and the families with special needs. Then we developed complex trauma-informed ABA course based on current education strategies. And we started pilot ABA course sequence. And in this course, what we do now, we facilitate communication between parents and professionals. And next slide will be a structure of course sequence. So it is just 6 steps. It consists of step 1, which is introduction, just research-based ABA, observations, and all definitions. Step 2 is distinction and data collection, and we do it scientific practitioner model way. Step 3 is functional analysis and developmental psychology. Step 4 is about interventions, but we do focus on language development. And in language development, we focus on deixis. Step 5, also interventions, because it's very important to do and to know how to make interventions. We focus on joint attention, on theory of mind, and on relational frame theory. And last module unit deals with ethics, as is usually like this in courses. But the goal is to develop integrative, system-based approach with students. And we put, as you already, as I have already mentioned, we put play into the basis of this course sequence. And the goal is to show professionals and families how to use this deixis concept in therapy. And deixis concept refers to specific time, place, person in context, and it can be done in play while you are playing with children. And the next one, please. Trauma-informed treatment emphasize importance of people experience, and it helps to create safe and optimal environmental conditions for language development and facilitate adjustment to new conditions to make child be in society. And to sum it up, just you see we did research contribution on a scientific practitioner model way. Data and statistic has been done based off ACEs, resilience, and social and emotional learning. Our solution is to do intervention. We do it voluntary, do education, courses for families and for professionals. And what is important is pedagogic attention to the role of emotions in intercultural education and analysis of the role of social emotional learning. Also can be formal and informal education setting. Both is okay, but important to be trauma informed always. And for future plans, just we plan another course for parents. Thank you for your attention.
That's it.
Dear colleagues, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting, very detailed, a lot of information. I think that our participants will have questions to it, and I invite you to write them in the chat so we should provide the opportunity to Anastasia and Olena to answer them after the end of the session. So during the next speeches, we will collect them, and if you also want to verbally ask the questions, we will always put it. So without losing any more time, I will go further to the next part, and it's a part of Joshua Kremeyer, who is a certified family LMFT therapist, AAMFT approved supervisor, and a PhD. And it's very important that Dr. Kremeyer has military experience in Iraq, and also he's helping servicemen and families of servicemen. And I hope that he will share his experience with us today, because it's not only work in the USA, but also a lot of work in Ukraine. And in fact, from the beginning of the war, the full-scale invasion, Joshua was helping us a lot. We are very, very thankful for that, and we'll be happy to hear your experience, Joshua.
Thank you.
I will ask you to check if you are in the English channel.
I am.
Yes, great. Yes, Valeria will show your presentation, and please let us know when we can start.
Yeah, I'm ready. So thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you to all the organizers. And as Valerie said, I am Dr. Joshua Kremeyer. I am a counselor and family therapist. And I'm currently teaching in 2 places at our institute that I helped build in Kyiv. It's called Open Doors. I will put the web link to that place in the chat, so you can see that. I represent that institute and our clinic as well. And currently I teach in the US at Colorado Christian University. I'm a professor there. And I have been coming to Ukraine since 2015 to help build this program and focus on standards of trauma-informed care. So we have trained almost 200 psychologists in how to work with trauma-informed care to include various trauma treatments. And I'm going to share today on the specifics of what we've done in Ukraine with military populations based on a lot of experience here in the US. We've had since September 11th, 2001, we've had lots of experience learning about best practices for treating military and military families. So that is what I'm going to focus on today. Veterans and those that serve, they've already shown that they're willing to defend their country. But of course, the impact of war provides many different challenges. If we focus on treating the military and the military family clients that come in to see us for help, there's much good that they can continue to bring to society. Often what happens is veterans come back from war and they struggle much more than they need to. And I don't think society understands the benefit of continued service in different ways. So I'm going to highlight some of the lessons learned from my own experience and from the research in working with military families. Next slide, please. So yes, my whole family, I have 3 daughters, and my whole family has been in Ukraine with me, and they're hoping to come again soon. Next slide. And prior to becoming a mental health professional, I did serve in the United States Army, and this is a picture of a Ukrainian helicopter. I got to work with some Ukrainian troops in Kosovo when I was there. Next slide, please. And since 2007, I have been working almost exclusively with military and military families in various ways. And this is a picture of some of the work that I've done with military families. We bring them all together. And I have been doing this work in Ukraine as well and bringing a model of experiential therapy for the entire family. One of the things that we have found in working with veterans is that we would often get them into some good treatment and then send them right back into their family. And we had not given their family the support that they needed. So this is lesson number 1. We need to treat the entire family system. We need to have resources for everybody so that if we help a veteran who's been on the front lines with their trauma, let's send them back into the family without helping the family. They're most often going to be coming back for more assistance. Next slide, please. Just another picture of some of the work we've done. We get people moving around. We do talk about things as well, but there's a lot of activity base in what we've been doing. Next slide, please. Yeah, we need to serve the people who have served us, those that are fighting right now. We need to come together. And I liked what I've heard so far in this conference, a lot of talk about collaboration and this I would offer as another lesson that we've learned, there needs to be an end to fighting with each other, those of us that are all trying to help in different ways. We are stronger together. We can lift more when we lift with another person. And we have learned this lesson many times over in our work with military and military families. Next slide, please. So I've got two things that I'm going to share on. The first is a couple of general thoughts on military culture, what we've learned about the culture within our cultures that is helpful to know in helping military and military families. So next slide, please. As we know, those that serve on the front lines are heroes. I think everybody understands and feels such gratitude to those that are willing to sacrifice so much for the defense of freedom and the people that they are protecting. Next slide, please. However, even the strength of a warrior is a front. That underneath the tough facade, veterans and those that have seen the horrors of war, they carry much behind their mask. And we cannot simply tell people coming back from the front lines to find a job, get back to their family life. It is not a smooth transition. And from what we're doing now in working with stabilization, when there's an active war going on, we're not always getting to the depth of trauma work that we will get to when the war is done. But as we move to that, we need to be prepared for doing some deep work, not just with our veterans, but for all of the trauma that everybody has experienced, to get behind the mask and get to the true root of the problem. Next slide, please. So some of the primary characteristics of military culture that serve very well for people while they are serving in the military. So they serve a function that's necessary while they are in service are secrecy, stoicism, and honor and sacrifice. Secrecy is needed for the security of operations that are occurring. Stoicism, you need to have because you cannot stop to have emotions surrounding things that you've seen or done in the moment. You need to often keep fighting. And of course, there's great honor and much sacrifice in military service. However, when people transition out of the military, so again, in preparation for returning home, secrecy doesn't often help in therapy. We are asking people to be honest and forthcoming and sharing of their experiences. And there's a strong stigma, especially stronger within the military culture, a stigma against sharing because they've learned not to share too much information. They've also learned to hold things in and not have emotions except for anger. This doesn't work well when they come back to their family system. And the honor and sacrifices that people have made on the front lines, they miss having that when they come back. It's hard to find the same level of meaning and purpose within activities of daily living. Next slide, please. So just a few more thoughts. I'm not going to read all of these. But the one that I'd like to highlight the most is that we need to have ways for veterans to continue to serve and find meaning and purpose within their daily lives. This is a significant factor in treating the military client and their family, and also continuing to have a positive impact on society. I don't have the website handy, but I'm going to type it in the chat. There's an organization called The Mission Continues. This is a organization created by a veteran here in the United States that helps veterans to find ways to continue to volunteer their time in society when they come back from war and finish their service. So it's a great concept that helps veterans feel like they still have a mission. They still have some way to serve and benefit society. So that is another point I'd like to highlight. Next slide, please. Basically, what happens with for any human that experiences trauma, the most common way to deal with things, because it's painful to face them head on, is that we avoid. And so much of what we do in helping people is to find ways to avoid avoiding, to not avoid, but to face, process, and walk through the things that are difficult for them to deal with. So things like drinking alcohol is a very common way of coping. It's not the worst thing somebody could do, but it's also not the best thing they could do. They're avoiding basically dealing with the difficult things they've experienced. So all the work we do we need to have multiple ways, multiple avenues of assistance, many pathways into getting help. There's not one size fits all approach. Next slide, please. The final thing that I want to share is it's called the Comprehensive Model of Veteran Wellness. This is something that was developed here in the US that specifically talks to the veteran, but again is also applicable to the entire family system. What we talk about with this model are the key areas that need to be addressed in all people who've experienced trauma. We need to assess and potentially treat various areas and have different doors in to this model, because not everybody will willingly come in through one door. They might have access to care through a different door. Next slide, please. So this is the model that I wanted to highlight. And the way we use this is each of these areas you can think of as having 3 levels. So the color represents the level that somebody would be at, or a family system would be at, in each of these areas. If you assess or rate this area as green, that means that it's probably a healthy area in this person or this family's life. They don't struggle much in this area. They have resources in this area. They're doing well. If they have yellow, that means that there's some issues. There's some struggle in this area. They are needing some help, and there's struggle. If you rate their area as red, this can mean that it's a crisis or an imminent threat. There's some significant problem in this area. And it's an area that we want to try to help this individual or family get assistance with first. We triage the red areas and try to help in those areas first. So I'm just going to describe each of these areas briefly, and then I'll be done. So if we start in the upper right at the 1 o'clock position, there's a general category called needs. With needs, think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're familiar with that concept. People need food, safety, shelter, before they need help with their self-esteem and their emotions. They need to have their basic needs met first. So we need to understand, where is this person that I'm trying to help with their needs? And if they have significant deficits with basic needs in their life, we need to try to work on those things first to give them a foundation. When we build a house, we need to have a strong foundation first, the cement foundation. Everything else rests upon that. The next area, going around the clock, is family systems. We need to understand what is going on with their support system, the people around them, people they live with, people that are important in their life. Do they have resources here, or is it something that we can bring in family members and friends and try to have them also assist in helping the person that we're trying to help? The next category is traumatic brain injury, especially for those that have served on the front lines. We have protocols and assessments for treatment that are proven to be effective at helping people work through the symptoms and experiences of having a brain injury. Brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder have been called the hallmark injuries of war. They are very common, and many people don't even remember that they've had the experience of a brain injury. But we do need to have resources for that. So if you're not somebody that treats brain injury, being informed in working with military and military families, we need to have resources. We need to know, we should know somebody that does work with brain injury, so that if the person we're trying to help needs help, we can refer them. The next category is post-traumatic stress disorder. Not everybody who's served on the front lines has PTSD, but we need to be aware of it, that most people will have at least some symptoms within this disorder. It's hard to go to war and not have the impact of it come home with you. Family members can also have vicarious trauma and develop the same symptoms that those on the front lines have experienced. It's kind of like throwing a pebble in a pond and the ripple effect, the ripples that go out from that pebble, the rock that you threw in the pond. That's how it works with the family. So we need to assess these areas again, find out where somebody is, and do they need help? Is it something I can help them with? Or do I need to send them to somebody else? The next category is substance abuse. We need to assess and have good referrals for substance abuse treatment. It is the primary coping strategy in military cultures around the world. It's an unfortunate thing that we share within our culture. The next category is emotion. We need to get behind the mask. We need to tell veterans and families that it's okay to have the emotions that they weren't able to have when they experienced the things they experienced. That it's okay to have happy emotions, sad emotions. All emotions are okay. They're just emotions. This is the realm of psychotherapy. Helping veterans and families feel like they have a safe place to be genuine with their emotions is one of the most significant parts of their healing. The next category is purpose and meaning. I would argue that this is absolutely essential for those that have served in the military to rediscover their mission. How does their mission continue after they've served on the front lines. We need to be thinking about ways to plug people in to ongoing service. If we don't do this, our veterans are going to come back from the front and continue to struggle and be a detriment to society instead of a benefit to society. The final category is called moral injury. When we see the horrors of war, it changes our entire worldview. We move from thinking that the world is basically a good, safe, decent place to knowing that there are people who wish to inflict great harm upon us and that there is truly evil in the world. This is true for any traumatic experience. It changes our entire perspective on the world and the people around us. This is something that is very deep and takes time to get to, and it is also often in the realm of psychotherapy that this is what we deal with. So if you didn't have a resource before, you have at least one now, and I'm sure you've learned of others here. Being connected and sharing resources, I know, is a big part of this conference. All right, my final thoughts. Next slide, please. We need to prepare now for those returning from the front lines. We need to be working together and not competing against each other. We are stronger together. We need to find ways for our veterans and our families to heal in all of the areas that I just discussed, and we need to have resources ready for them. They will be one of the biggest assets we have in Ukraine in rebuilding not just buildings, but lives. We need to listen to the stories of war. We need to grieve. We need to celebrate the culture that we're fighting for and the things that we're fighting for. And we need to be ready for that as things end. Next slide, please. Last slide. So what do the veterans and families need? To summarize, they need to be seen as they are, for who they are, people who have served at a great sacrifice to those around them. They need to be honored for what they gave and for the struggles that they continue to have. Veterans and their families need to be loved and honored for their unchanging essence of devotion and sacrifice. Thank you all so much. I will, final thing that I'm going to do is just put my email into the chat so that if anybody wants to be connected, I'm glad to have you reach out to me, and I hope to see some of you in Ukraine soon. Thank you all. I'll stick around for the question time, and Slava Ukraini.
Glory to hears, dear Joshua. Thank you for your speech. It was very complex and holistic material based on your experience, so it was very valuable for us. And I see raised hands already. Now we have the Q&A session, so I invite everyone to ask your questions. I would like to thank Joshua, and when I was speaking about my foreign colleagues as an island of stability, Joshua was another example of resilience for me, let's say. Months before the full-scale invasion, he was in Ukraine and taught a lot of my colleagues as well about his model. So I can see how this help is still with us. And Joshua also came to Khmelnytsky while the war was already in with his team, and I really want to thank you for your work, and I hope for our meeting upcoming time. Thank you. Yes, it is very important to have such support even intercontinentally. And I see the words of gratitude in the chat. I joined these words. I was at the event which was organized by Natalia and her colleagues. So I met Joshua there, and it was a very inspirational and important speech for me. So I join your words. Dear colleagues, once again, I invite you to ask questions in the chat. I see that there was a question about teaching Ukrainian psychologists and available formats and accessibility. If it is in regard to Anastasia and Olena, I can see the answer already in the chat that this training process is going on both for parents and specialists. Also, maybe if Olena could elaborate on that, but I think it's quite a general question also to Joshua. So is there a possibility to study somehow from you for the specialists? And also Natalia will remind us about some announcements after that. I think Olena had to leave us. Yes, so that the question goes to you, Joshua.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the kind words and for your great question too. So I will highlight a couple of resources that I would recommend for study. The first is our colleague here, Natalia Pidaluk, that you just spoke. I hope it's okay to mention you. There's a great approach that has been very effective, and many people studied it, Trauma Focus, that you have most likely mentioned here. So I would recommend that. Also, the institute that I helped create, Open Doors, the website that I put in the chat. We have a 2-year program that is the equivalent of a master's degree in trauma-informed counseling. That is our full program, and it involves basic skill building in effective psychotherapy with supervision of that experience. That is a unique part of our program, that we watch practice demonstrations of skills. We teach something and then we watch and give feedback on what we call basic skills. Of some examples of these skills are summarizing questions, reflecting things back to the person you're working with. But we help people increase their effectiveness of these absolutely necessary basic skills. And then most importantly, we are a program that has trauma-informed practices. So we have some basic understanding of trauma, what it does to the mind, the body, and the spirit. And we help people with effective evidence-based approaches to treating the impact of trauma. So we have the program that gives you a very full perspective on all of these things. But we also, through Open Doors, will do individual and specific trainings. There's opportunities for specific modalities that we might treat. We have some classes that are separate in play therapy, how to work with children and adults using play therapy techniques. I sometimes do special seminars on military culture and working with military families and children. So it's really varied, but if you check that resource, I'm often providing trainings there myself. I'm hoping to come again this summer to do some of those trainings. And I'm actually going to be there in March. I'm going to be in Ukraine the first week of March. I'm not doing any trainings during this time in March, but I'm going to be doing a retreat for refugees, and we will be in the Carpathians, western part of the country. But we do a lot. I've helped with many of the trainings that we do.
Thank you for your answer. And I think that we can learn more via the link you provided, and also referred to you via email. And also exchange the information about teaching, learning opportunities that we all have. And such help in education is necessary, I think. So if anyone has any other questions, I will ask you to raise your hand or write about it in the chat. Please let us know. And while you're thinking, I will continue the series of questions. Dr. Kramer, please tell us what was the biggest challenge for you in working with the victims of war in Ukraine?
So thank you. Another great question. I think the thing that I have learned with all the work I've done in Ukraine, my first thought is that with military culture, it's very similar in different countries. The military culture, we have more in common than we have that's different. Almost every time I've worked with Ukrainian military families, I feel very at home and very comfortable. Of course, there are differences too. There absolutely are some differences, but there's such a bond that people that have served in uniform, such a bond that we have. So I think the biggest hurdle or obstacle that I've seen is this significant stigma against reaching out for help within the military culture. I believe that we need to find ways to reduce the stigma around getting help. I think this goes beyond military culture too, but it's stronger. The stigma against getting help is stronger in the military culture. What I have found to be most helpful in reducing the stigma is finding ways to make therapy and any kind of assistance that people get, finding ways to make it more likely that people will come first. The first step is just coming in and reaching out to get some help. And then we need to find ways to encourage people to be engaged in the process of their own healing. So it might sound like a contradiction, what I'm about to say. But when we can find ways to make therapy and other types of help fun, it reduces the resistance that people have to engaging in the process. So I've done things like calling groups that I do, I call them classes instead of group therapy. People are often more willing to go to a class. Another example would be having food at different things that I do with military families. As a veteran myself, I know if you tell me there's food somewhere, I'll probably come, especially if it's shashlik. And then instead of
thank you for such practical moments.
I just had one other thought. Thank you. In doing activities, we need to find ways to not just talk at people. We need to give people information. This is true. But if we are talking at people, they're not as likely to internalize what we're telling them. we need to find ways to have not just the veterans, but other people we work with. We need to find ways to have them experience the thing that we're trying to get them to understand, and experience it in a way that gets them potentially up and moving, not always just sitting and talking. It's one of the biggest tools that I've found in military culture, because they're used to doing this. They're used to getting up and moving. It's how they learn, how all the military skills that they learn. They don't just sit in a classroom, they go out and do them. And so these approaches and these specific ideas are what I found to be most helpful.
Thank you very much for these interesting ideas. Yeah, let me know if anybody would like to continue their thoughts. I thought you would want to continue. No, okay. So if we have more questions, it's time for them. If not, I will offer you to move through some practical activities. As Joshua said, that we need to sometimes get up and activize ourselves. So I will offer you to continue the topic of challenges which stand in front of us as psychologists and psychotherapists in these difficult circumstances, and who work with different audiences. And but I still think we will find some common commonalities. So I will launch a poll about what is the biggest challenge for your work right now. We have an opportunity to choose several options. I will translate all of them. So the first one is power and internet cutoffs, involvement of clients, growth in number of requests, professional burnout of the team, psycho-emotional condition of clients, involvement of resources for continuation of work, legislative gaps, lack of specific knowledge, or other. And if you have other thoughts or some other things that are a challenge for you right now, you can mention them in the chat. Or if you want to share your impressions or some comments verbally, you can also do so. Yeah, I can see it. People are voting. It's great. Okay, let's check the results. So you can see that lack of specific knowledge is one of the most popular challenge. Almost 58% of people voted for that. So also we lack resources for continuing our work, professional burnout of the team. But people also voted for other factors. Of course, for those who work in Ukraine, it's power and internet cutoffs and involvement of clients, interconnected reasons. And the least challenge is the number of requests and psycho-emotional condition of clients. So maybe anybody would like to comment? Yes, please, Natalia. I think everything from the above mentioned is a challenge for us. For some reason there is no sound. And yes, we will just solve this problem. Okay, now the sound is more. Everything from the above mentioned is a challenge for us, but I think that now it's important for us to make decisions quickly when the situation is changing or transforming. Remembering what we worked with in the beginning and for now, we understand that we need to develop a system of resilient support and to fight all these challenges in complex. And maybe if it's about legislative gaps, we need to work on interconnections and cooperation between state and non-governmental sector. And as we were speaking today and yesterday, we need to interconnect lots of different sectors in order to build a system which would be resilient for a long time. Yes, so it will not last for a year, but much longer, because we can see how long is this war, and with the consequences of this war and the examples of conflicts from the past, we can see that it can last for a long time. Maybe anybody else would like to comment? What kind of challenges you were facing at your team initiative? Maybe something that was not mentioned in the list. Yeah, maybe. I see Tatiana turned on video. Maybe she would like to comment. I would say that for me, power and internet cutoffs is not just cutoffs, because it's the absence of connection at all, because my phone is also not working when there is no electricity. And a lot of things are interconnected. For example, the transport is not working well, air alert, and I cannot get to my office. I cannot plan consultations online because I don't know when it will be off or on. So these problems are layering and combining with each other. And as psychotherapists, psychologists, we are also not safe. And when there's air alert, we have to make a decision whether we want to go to bomb shelter or we stay with our clients, or move to some more or less safe place. So we have to deal with our inner condition, but at the same time also help our client. And yeah, that's important for me. Yes, it's true. While in time of our work with Tatiana, she's a part of the human rights sector in our psychological hotline. We were speaking at our supervisions about the fact that people who are helping are in the situation when they need help, and how can we be strong and balanced in order to keep this frame. So maybe anybody else wants to share? I see a comment in the chat. We had an active conversation in the chat today. We were sharing our initiatives, and we continue this good tradition. So if you need consultation about how to stay in touch while blackouts, or if you have any other technical questions, you can apply to free hotline for cybersecurity issues. We work from Sunday till Friday from 8 till 22 o'clock. And there's a link to the website as well. And thank you, Henry, our dear colleague, who is also our technical assistant today, for sharing this important resource for us. Any other comments? I can see that we are developing even some methodics of overcoming challenges right now. So, okay, if you have any other thoughts, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, but we will move forward to the next poll. So the question is, what help do you or your team need? we have again a certain list, which we could see while we were conducting questionnaires before the event among public and non-governmental sector. So we were asking them how they organize the psychological help online, and we asked this question as well. So we want to compare now. So the options are involvement of professionals, expanding partnerships, prevention of burnout, learning, exchange of experience with colleagues, sharing information about professional activity, technical support and equipment, and funding of professional activity. Great, almost half of the people already voted. You can see this poll on your screen. Maybe it will show different if you are from phone or laptop. But I think it should be on. Yes, we also had this technical question in the chat. I hope everybody who wanted could vote. So let's see what we have. So the teams need the most help with learning, exchanging experience, funding of activity. After that, expanding of partnerships, and technical equipment and involvement of specialists. So truly, this event is about expanding partnerships and opportunities for learning. We exchange information, experience. So I see that we can cover some demand, I hope. And maybe anybody would like to comment what you have seen on the screen or share information about your initiatives again. Please let me know either by turning on your video, raising your hand, or in the chat if you want to. Yes, we see a question. I think that it is like a second step from the first poll, that maybe now we can form some new corporations, new communities, which can overcome the challenges mentioned before. And maybe organization of such retreats for professionals can be a place for exchanging experience and also for prevention of professional burnout. So we can develop some joint ideas, taking into account these points that we mentioned. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, please let me know if you want to participate, if you want to ask or comment. Okay. I see that Joshua commented in the chat and provided the link to some funding opportunities. Yeah, if you want to keep some all these links and information, please copy and paste them somewhere in your notes, because today we have a lot of different important emails, links, and other resources which will come in handy later. So as we have already covered everything almost, we offer you the last poll. The question is, do you think it is necessary to conduct such events in the future? Yes or no? I will copy the chat now, so we can keep it and also use it afterwards while you're voting. Okay, well, great. We can see that 100% of those who voted said that such events are necessary, and we are happy to hear that, and we will do our best to continue them in the future. Today we heard some announcements of the upcoming events where we could meet as a community and share our experiences. And I hope for new events, we will continue working on this. So now we have time for last comments, last words. If you want to write it in the chat, or if you want to say something verbally, I will also offer you to make to use a Mentimeter. Maybe you know about this tool. It's something we use often at online events. I will share the link with you in the chat, and we will have a kind of cloud of wishes to each other. So in the chat, we have the link to Menti. If you want to, you can go via the link and leave your wishes via the link, or if you want, you can just speak up. If you are connecting with the phone, you can scan the QR code as well and vote from the phone. Okay, let's see what we have there. I will try to share my screen once again. Let's share my screen. Yeah, so we can see here the wishes to each other and the speakers. People say thank you, we wish you lightness, interaction, optimism, inspiration, more meetings, peace and victory, resilience, strength, resources, optimism. Let's hope it will all come true. Thank you everyone for this event. Thank you for your experience and the warmth that we felt during the event. Thank you. And I hope that we will all stay safe and in resourceful state, and we'll have opportunities to help others. I hug you all, and if you want, you can write your gratitude words. It's always very nice to hear and see and read. So yeah, it's very pleasant to see how everybody is thanking speakers and participants. Well, now Valeria is thanking me as well as an interpreter.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Henry, for technical support. Thank you, all my colleagues and friends, for our joint work. And it was incredible working with you all this month. And today's event was very inspiring for me. And I wish for us to continue this way. Thank you for your kind words in the chat, and I'm also looking forward to next meetings with you. And let's wrap up